Global launch servers and DC Dark Legion are about to get Swamp Thing in the bleed, and it's time for another Whaler Skip video. I want to talk for a quick second about the confusion that seems to be going around about Swamp Thing coming to the bleed for global launch servers, and that's going to be for around 206 to 300, maybe a little bit past that. But a lot of people have been relying on information provided by Naira, the VIP bot, and that seemed to suggest that Riddler was going to be coming early to global launch servers. But within the last week or so, we got a different confirmation from Naira that Swamp Thing was going to be coming. It's caused a little bit of frustration for people who had been planning around picking up Riddler, and also people who were trying to go for their Justice League Dark team and thought they had a little bit more time to save. I know that some of the JLD reruns are going on right now. It seems that there's going to be another set of JLD reruns to coincide with Swamp Thing, which is a little frustrating for people who were hoping to maybe pull for Constantine now, get him a little bit higher in their account, and then go for Swamp Thing. You are going to have to make a couple of executive decisions for your account, though, on whether to go for Swamp Thing or whether to just keep investing into your existing Justice League Dark team. So let's jump over to our Swamp Thing Whaler. Swamp Thing is going to be a warrior champion, so he's going to be up on the front line. And the first thing I'll say before we jump into the discussion section of this Whaler Skip video is, you know, a lot of people are wondering whether they should be replacing Swamp Thing with one of the other champions, maybe a low-built Zatanna, or maybe they replace him with their Dr. Fate, who they might not have built up well. But the true replacement for Swamp Thing is going to be Wonder Woman. So the big question you have to ask yourself is, are you investing in or trying to develop your Amazon's team to the point that you need to pull Wonder Woman away from your Justice League team? So that's question number one. If so, then you kind of have to pull for Swamp Thing so that you have a viable replacement. The other thing that you probably need to be asking yourself is how far you can invest in Swamp Thing if you're going to be going after him, and kind of is it worth it to get a 5-white Swamp Thing when you could probably do better with a fully invested Wonder Woman. And then finally, obviously, if you're a spender, you probably don't care that much, but in my opinion, at the higher levels of play, especially in Meta Brawl, Swamp Thing is just a purely better replacement for Wonder Woman for your Justice League Dark team because of the damage reduction that he's going to do on the enemy team, the spiritual damage that he's able to do in modes like Training Simulator, and also to an extent the kind of like, I guess, chip damage you would probably call it for Meta Brawl. He can do pretty well there. And then he's also going to have the ability to do any energy drain on your opponents. So one of the biggest counters to Justice League Dark and Meta Brawl is Legion of Doom, and having Swamp Thing in your lineup is going to prevent them from taking those quick turns that they do at the very beginning of fights. And it actually gives you a fighting chance, especially if you have a well-developed Constantine. You're going to be able to take those turns. So I know I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself. I usually save this for the end of these videos, but I think it's important to get that information out there so that you can make the decision on whether you want to go for Swamp Thing at all, and that's why we're putting it a little bit closer to the front. Now, Swamp Thing is going to have 2 tag synergies. He's going to have 1 primary, 1 secondary, and of course, we already mentioned that. He's going to have the Justice League Dark tag synergy. If you deploy 3 Justice League Dark champions, it's going to increase their spiritual amp by 20%, and you can get that all the way up to 30 by deploying 4 or 5 Justice League Dark champions. He also has the Metahuman tag synergy. We talk about this one almost all the time because it's one of the only secondary tag synergies we're getting lately, it feels like, but deploying Metahuman champions is going to increase their attack and HP by a percentage between 5 and 10%. The Swamp Thing's ultimate is called Overgrowth. He's going to deal spiritual damage equal to a percentage of his attack to enemies in a circular area. It is an AoE attack. And he'll also reduce their energy by 25% no matter where it is. He has a passive ability on his ultimate, so at the start of the battle, Swamp Thing is going to reduce all enemies' current energy by 35%. That does increase as you get a little bit higher. So you get this up. I've got it at yellow stars right now. So getting it to red stars will increase the energy reduction to 30 and 35%. So I don't want to harp on this too much, but I discuss it a lot in my videos. Energy manipulation, or in other games, I would call it turn meter manipulation, like how fast you're able to take your next turn or use your next ability, is, in my opinion, the most important aspect of playing these games. So anytime you're able to increase your turn meter or increase your energy gain or reduce your enemy's energy gain, that is a top tier, S tier talent or ability that you want to be investing in. So Swamp Thing's ultimate is the break point, I think, for his for pulling him. If you are able to get to that next 1 star, like the first star of any star level, that's where you want to be trying to get him to, in my personal opinion. Swamp Thing's first basic skill is called Vine Lash. He's going to be dealing spiritual damage equal to a percentage of his attack to one enemy, a single target ability, and he'll also reduce their current energy by 12%. Obviously, in Meta Brawl, you can't control really who he's attacking. This is probably going to hit whoever is directly in front of him on the front line. So keep that in mind. You know, if someone's running a Lex or a Deathstroke or something like that, like whoever he starts attacking to begin with, that's whose energy is going to get reduced. If you invest in the Multiversal Force talent for this ability, it will reduce the cooldown of Vine Lash by a certain duration. If you have it maxed out, it should be about 2 seconds. The second basic skill for Swamp Thing is going to be Natural Remedy. And after the start of battle, Swamp Thing is going to gain a percentage of Spiritual Amp every 5 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So, or I should say at 4 purple stars, it's going to be 15% Spiritual Amp every 5 seconds. So after 15 seconds, he'll be able to get 45% spiritual. If you invest in the Multiversal Force talent for this ability, Swamp Thing's spiritual defense will increase by a percentage. Fairly important one for your frontline attackers, so definitely one that you want to consider dumping some points into. For the third basic skill, we've got Swamp Surge. At the start of battle, Swamp Thing is going to summon a swamp for a certain duration, and that swamp usually hits your backline players more than the front line. A lot of the time, you'll see your frontline players run out of the swamp after he puts it down. Obviously, you want to have him up in the front line so that the swamp covers more ground whenever you do that. Its effect will be doubled if you have 3 Justice League Dark allies in your squad, so keep that in mind. He really works best with a Justice League Dark team. And then the swamp is going to reduce damage taken by allies within range by a percentage. Another ability that's going to help you with those attackers who are able to reach the back line, like Batman to an extent, but mainly Lex Luthor. And then all of your single target range DPS like Sinestro, Green Arrow to a lesser extent, and things like that. Also going to help you with being able to withstand big AoE hits from people like Supergirl or a mirror match against another Constantine. The Multiversal Force talent for this ability is going to increase Swamp Thing's crit resistance by a percentage. Probably not the most important one to be investing in, but again, for those frontline defenders, you definitely want to make sure that they are resistant to crits so that they don't die almost immediately in the battle. And then we have the global skill for Swamp Thing, which is Green Whisper. This will increase all champions' spiritual defense by a percentage, and then an additional percentage will be given to your warrior champion. I mentioned the primary force talents for Swamp Thing. Again, you definitely want to be investing in those. You can see that I've spent more on trying to reduce the cooldown of Vine Lash. You want to be trying to cycle that as much as possible. And then obviously I've got some work to do on the more defensive natured ones, but I've definitely invested a decent amount into some of the other talents here. A couple that I need to work on, but the spiritual amp, you definitely want to be trying to give him as much of that as possible. We've also got the spiritual penetration, which I think is even more important than the amp, because it's just going to give you a baseline better attack for Swamp Thing. For gear, obviously you want to be going for those Justice League Dark tag synergy gear pieces at level 500. That's going to give you the best outcome for Swamp Thing. It's going to increase all of his stats and abilities. I know the tag synergy gives like a 20% increase, so it's very important to get those tag synergy gear pieces as quickly as you can. I know it's difficult to farm those at the end game, but definitely if you're able to put those on him, it's going to make him quite formidable. As far as your transmute priorities for Swamp Thing, you really want to be going for energy gain. As much energy gain as you can possibly get on him, the better. That's going to keep your team alive a lot longer and, help him ramp up his spiritual damage just a little bit. Obviously, health, whether it be the percentage kind or just the basic stat increase for health, those are important. Also, spiritual defense, I think, would probably be a pretty solid one as well. And then let's talk about his legacy pieces. So obviously the most important legacy piece for Swamp Thing is going to be the antler crown. And also it makes him look pretty amazing as well. Getting those wings and the antlers, I love the effects that they're putting on some of these unique legacy pieces now. It's really differentiating champions, and it's just, I know that aesthetics aren't super important to these games, but it is kind of cool to see what they look like with and without these new legacy pieces. And the antler crown is probably the coolest one in the game from that standpoint. But more importantly, the gear effects. So it's going to give you a base HP, you're going to get attack percentage, and you're going to get HP percentage. So it's going to make him fairly tanky. And you're going to have two abilities for the Antler Crown. The first one is going to be the unique ability that only Swamp Thing has access to, and that's Green Knight. So at the start of the battle, Swamp Thing is going to inflict Nature's Curse on all enemies for 10 seconds. Nature's Curse will reduce attack by a percentage and crit rate by a percentage. Now, I just have Antler Crown at 5 white stars, and it significantly increased the attack reduction and crit rate reduction on the Antler Crown. So this is a must-have. Like, I think if you're going to go for Swamp Thing, you really need to get the Antler Crown, and you need to get it to 5 white as quickly as you can. So we're talking a 400 Magic Eye investment for Swamp Thing. I think bare minimum if you want him to work the way he should. Now, I know non-spenders are going to have issues trying to get to that point. So it's definitely something that you're going to need to save up for. Obviously, priority for the Justice League Dark team is going to be Constantine's legacy piece first. And then once you get the Magic Sigil, you can go for the Antler Crown and try to get it up and running. The second ability on the Antler Crown is one that any champion would have access to. It will increase the wearer's ultimate damage by 10%, or a percentage, I should say. And then after the start of battle, the wearer will restore a percentage of lost health every 5 seconds until the end of battle. So you're going to have basically just like a persistent heal over time for whatever champion equips this. You could probably make the argument that some other champions in your lineup could benefit from this. For longer term players, for heavier spenders, you could probably do a little bit of experimentation and maybe pull the Antler Crown off to throw it on some of your other champions for specific feats or missions or what have you. But for the most part, Antler Crown is going to stay on your Swamp Thing. As far as reasonable replacements for this, if you don't have the Antler Crown, anything that's going to provide a decent amount of HP and also energy gain for your Swamp Thing is going to be important. I think Gabriel Horn will help the most. It's going to be the biggest one that you'd probably want to use. Obviously, I'm using it on Dr. Fate to try to get more shields, so I hate to pull that off to Swamp Thing, and that's kind of one of the issues, one of the reasons why you need the Antler Crown. But you'll be getting HP percentage, and energy gain bonus. You also get an ability that will increase HP percent, and at the start of battle, it will increase all allies' attack by a percentage for the first 20 seconds of the fight. So not a ability that's going to be used multiple times during battles. It's really important to get some really high damage attacks off to start the battle. That's why it's really important in places like Meta Brawl for your Constantine to get a couple of ults off using this Sonic. Outside of that, it's kind of dealer's choice on what you would want to equip to him if you don't have access to those two legacy pieces. The Modern Sonic Boom is a pretty decent replacement there. We've also got another, let's see, probably the improved Fear Gas Vial would be, pretty solid. Any tanky champion will benefit from getting the dodge and spiritual defense and health. So I think this one will be pretty solid if you have nothing else. Now, Swamp Thing is very clearly a PvP oriented champion, and he does really well there, but I would also be remiss if I didn't say he's great for Training Simulator, especially for the Forest of the Fallen, which is the specific Justice League Dark training simulator. He's going to really help out there and allow you to push some of those higher tier levels. For teams that you would actually use him with, really just Justice League Dark is where you're going to throw him. Now, I will say there are some niche use cases, like I actually use him with my Death Metal Wonder Woman in Meta Brawl sometimes, and there are some other places that you can kind of throw him in, and he's going to provide a decent amount of again, trying to prevent that energy gain. Like, that's one of the things that I think makes him such a fun champion to use and a great champion in the PvP centered pieces of the game, is that that energy reduction just really does matter. Well, that's going to be all the time we have for this Swamp Thing Whaler Skip video. I hope it's been helpful to allow you to decide whether or not you want to go for Swamp Thing and pull him. He's a really fun champion. He's a great champion to pull for. I definitely think he lands on the whale side of the spectrum, especially if you're trying to build Justice League Dark. And if you are a fan of the channel, then you are no stranger to the fact that I push Justice League Dark for both a non-spender team and for a spender team. They just really are one of the more well-rounded teams. Now, are they the best at everything? No, but they're pretty decent at it. You're going to get pretty decent combat cycle scores, training simulator, and also they're pretty solid in strategic challenge and even Meta Brawl. They're part of the discussion, at least. There are better teams at each of those game modes, but Swamp Thing has definitely made Justice League Dark. It's not necessarily put them on the map, but it's definitely made them justifiable to go for any player in the game. Let me know in the comments below if you already have Swamp Thing, how you're enjoying him, whether you're going to be pushing for him. Love to hear that information on how everyone's account progress is going. Join my Discord server and let me know there how your team building is going and what your plans are with Swamp Thing. If you haven't already done so, definitely hit the like and subscribe buttons today. You'll get access to future videos on DC Dark Legion, and it'll also help a little bit with the algorithm to push this video out to as many people as possible. Otherwise, I hope to see you on the next video.